Good. Okay. So I remember, Helen, when I emailed you for the imposter syndrome topic, and if you could come talk about the panel. So I think we were having this conversation around like what exactly is imposter syndrome, right? And I know everyone has their kind of like own definitions around it. And a fun fact that even I didn't know that the term was coined in 1978 in a study that was focused on high-achieving women. And that was the first time the imposter phenomenon was coined. Yeah. So it would be amazing to start and just share, what imposter syndrome kind of means to you and your first kind of interaction with it, as much as you can recall that. If you want to start? Yeah.
So I'm going to go with, I did quite a bit of reading before I got here because I wanted to talk about it with a little bit more responsibility because I didn't want to just be throwing around the phrase without any sort of understanding of what they were studying. So yes, he's right. The first study was in 1970 and it was around women who were high achieving and they had a slew of accomplishments and achievements, like they were PhD candidates or they had done really well in their career. But when faced with the evidence, they felt like they could explain it away by saying, oh, it's just luck. I got that job because they liked me personally because I'm very charming. Or I got that job because of some fluke in the selection process. So they said that, and they continued to go back in the 80s and 90s to continue to study that to see if it was specific to women, and it wasn't. So it's been replicated in both male and female, but the way they've decided to deal with it is slightly different. So the way women decide to deal with it is they get quiet and they do nothing, and the way men decide to deal with it is they impulsively try to change everything. So it's kind of a funny effect. But a lot of it is rooted to the way you're raised in your family. That was another study I just read 10 minutes ago. Basically cramped up until I sat here. But yeah, so it's been rooted to family backgrounds as well as environment and societal factors. So societal factors being women typically are not believed when they say they do things. So that's part of the environmental factor. And then, social factor, and environment is like your family background, and then your social economic status, and where you came from. So that's my definition, which is not mine. It's just based on a lot of other stuff, and it's actually called imposter phenomenon.
Yeah, right.
Not imposter syndrome. So I have no idea where that came from because it's not in any of the studies.
That's true.
But so anyway. Long-winded story. How I've kind of like encountered it is I don't have it.
That's amazing.
But there's a lot to be said about self-efficacy too, which is a construct that is very close to that, which I can talk about more, which is like in the learning process, how do you become better? How do you quiet the feelings of self-doubt? How do you make sure that you're motivated and feeling good throughout the rest of your career? So we can talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, thank you so much for setting the stage and also educating and sharing with everyone on a little bit of background around imposter phenomenon. Billy, for you, when is the first time that you, like when you were early in your career, you recall kind of having that sense of insecurity or fear of being exposed?
Yeah. I think I do suffer from it from time to time. I think I've tried to learn from past experiences, but even doing something like this has taken me well out of my comfort zone too. And I think I was on Twitter 2 days ago and seeing that you were reading all these reports and doing research, and that spiraled me into a bunch of anxiety, reading a bunch of articles and picking up some of those facts that you shared. But I think anytime I'm in that situation, I just remind myself that there's a reason that I am sitting in a seat, maybe feeling this way. There's qualities that I have, maybe, that I guess pertains to this situation too, but there's a reason you're here. There's a reason that even if you don't have all the right skill sets that you think you might have, or the people next to you have, there's something that you're contributing to it. And I think there's a lot of parallels to even just the last portfolio conversation around focus and focusing on what you were bringing to the table, and just continuing to remind yourself to do that, reflect on your accomplishments, and that's really helped me along the way.
Sally,
Yeah, I think.
when I asked you if you wanted to be on the panel, and then I told you Helen and Billy are also coming, then we had a little conversation around that. What has your kind of experience been, especially when you were just starting your career as an early stage designer, feeling this sense of insecurity?
Is this working?
That's right.
Hi. I think just first of all being here, like you're looking at imposter syndrome right now, just like even looking at the roster of speakers, I felt like I am the least tenured here, and like I'm undeserving of this. I feel like a fraud. Why am I here? But actually, just understanding, I have my own accomplishments, and I deserve to be here and sharing my story. And I guess like I, have had my, early career issues of like fighting that. So I guess an example is that my very first internship was at BlackBerry. Back then it was called RIM. Yep. Research in motion, and I only applied because all my classmates were applying. I didn't even know what interaction design was. So studying industrial design here at OCAD, that's not something you learn, interaction design, like designing for mobile, designing for apps, that's something that's very new. So then when I was hired, I had no idea what I was going to do for the next 3 months, right? And I felt like a fraud doing that. But I think really quickly within the first couple of weeks, you realize that you aren't hired to do that because it is your first time. I think what they're looking for is that your attitude and kind of your willingness to learn, and kind of having that mindset to grow within the company. I think that's a lot more like a healthier way of thinking of than like, hey, I need to know the answer because you don't.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And especially, do you think certain labels, like you graduated from OCAD, which in itself is, at least to people like me who never went to design school, it seems like a very big validation of your skills. And when I moved to Canada, even putting myself as a designer, I would always have that little pinch. I was like, oh, yeah, I'm a designer. Introducing yourself to people as a designer, because you feel like an imposter, right? Do you think, has there been any impact on having that level of education or lack of that label in feeling that sense of insecurity or imposter?
Okay, it's a question like having that degree.
Yeah, could be the education validation or that first job of even being a designer at BlackBerry. Like, did that help you? Did it make it easier in any way?
I would say the degree itself, not necessarily. I don't think a lot of companies actually look too hard into where you went to school, right? They're looking at your portfolio, right? They're looking at your work, but then I think your experience, your job experience, or your internships, that's like BlackBerry. That I feel like I got lucky again, right? I think that there is some luck to that, but I don't think it increases your credibility anymore than someone who's working at a smaller agency. At the end of the day, you're still doing similar work, tackling the same problems.
Hello?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I don't think I've ever looked at anyone's education credentials when I hired them. It was mostly just 100% their portfolio and their ability to talk about their work in the interviews. For myself, though, I did feel very uncomfortable with the education thing. So I grew up in a not so great environment, and I went to Seneca because really that was my only choice. And I remember feeling like, and this is so cool being at OCAD, because for me, OCAD was this separate thing that I couldn't go to. So, you grow up with not that much money, you grow up in not so great neighborhood, and you start to think that certain areas of the world are not available to you. So for me, it was more like an internal feeling. that educational thing. And I don't think education should be pursued for external validation. It's like, do you want to learn something? Like, are you interested in the program? Are you motivated by the teachers? Do you think your peers can give you something and teach you something back? So I did get something out of Seneca, but I do remember feeling a little bit upset that I couldn't go to OCAD or I couldn't go into like a university. But you know, there's tons of time to make it up. You're alive for like 80, 90 years now. It's an insane amount of time. I'm like 30, I'm bored. So I done over 60 years of this, and I was able to go back and educate myself and go back to school. It's cool. There's tons of time to do that.
Billy, I'm actually not aware of, did he go to design school or?
I went to, I think I agree that I don't think it's reflected on too much externally, but I think you do use it kind of as something that you agonize about internally. I went to a 2-year program. I'm from Winnipeg originally. It was a really great program out there. 90% of the industry went there in that part, but I think it was an early program that I was in. It the school has a good reputation in a localized industry, and so it's not something that I throw on my resume and jump off a roof about, but I think you naturally tend to look at other ways to build up your past and even sometimes over-talk some of your achievements, and I think that's always just a personal security.
Right. Yeah, I think personal security definitely seems to be a big reason, and this question also comes up quite often in our Slack groups and other places where people, maybe some of you are in the audience who reflect that persona or looking to switch careers, or go from traditional graphic design into UX, and they feel the need to go through some kind of formal education, but not as much for the learning part, but more for will I get a certificate? Will I get to add on LinkedIn that I did this program and the validation? So it's really interesting to hear from the other side.
And I think it stays true in your professional career too, like which logos you end up putting on your portfolio page. And
yeah.
I've done that, and I think in my LinkedIn I still have logos of things where maybe I'm not as proud of the project that I did, but it's a big company name that you get to put on there, and you just feel better about yourself.
Yeah. I did that once and got called out in the interview that I took the logo down. So I remember when Uber was launching in India, and I said, "Oh, Uber is launching in India." It was already a big name worldwide. And a friend of mine was involved in helping them launch in India. So he just wanted a bunch of print work to be done. So I did a lot of print work for them, specific to India initially. But then when I moved here, my portfolio was all UX and product design. But I was like, but Uber's logo, I need to add it, to make it look like it. So in one of the interviews I had a local tech startup, the head of design was like, "Oh yeah, this is cool, you worked for mobile app for this thing, and web app for this platform. What did you do for Uber? I saw the logo." And they were really they thought I was working at SF or Uber or something. And that was a good realization. I was like, no, shouldn't be. Yeah.
You just I don't know how buttons work. You just reminded me that logo walls actually do matter for the first couple of years of your career. I remember grain of salt is mobile phones barely existed when I started my career. So for a while it was, especially in Toronto, it was very agency focused, very advertising focused, so those logos meant a great deal.
Right.
So having a logo wall on your portfolio was oh my god.
Yeah.
It's so amazing.
Yeah, very true. We have an interesting question from the audience. Was there ever a big aha moment that made you realize that you need to overcome imposter syndrome? And which also means was that something that you just realized? How did you even self-realize that, okay, I am behaving in this way because I think I need to have that personal security, or I'm having some imposter phenomenon? Was that one point in time, or?
Yeah, so I moved to New York for work 4 years ago, and I didn't know why they were willing to hire a Canadian. They literally could have hired anyone else. They made the effort to actually kind of relocate me and hire me, and the salary was a lot higher. And at the times, comparing to what I was making in Toronto, it was a lot more. So that I didn't negotiate, and that was bad. Don't do that. Always negotiate. But I think it's like, well, now I have to do my capabilities is at like 2 times as much now, right? Like, and then now on my peers, I'm like, these are people I follow on Twitter. These are the people of like portfolios I've stalked. I'm like, I can't believe this is happening to me. But then you start to realize that, you know, you're under the same roof. You're deserving to be there as much as they are, and it's unhealthy to kind of put them kind of on this pedestal, and you know, just kind of getting over that and realizing you're all solving the same things. And I don't know. I guess that's my aha moment. Like, just because where they work, what city they're working in, that matters not as much, I don't think.
Right.
Yeah, I think I've had small progressional bits of aha moments, I think over the last 2-3 years or so, and as I've gotten further into more of the leadership side of my role and building the team and the department, I started at Envision when we were 6 people, we're around 900 now, and so I've just kind of scaled with the company, and every day on my team is the biggest team that I've ran, and I think always just feeling like you fell into it, and not you're constantly researching, you're constantly learning how to build it, but feeling like you're a step behind. And I think one moment was going to things like this, talking to other leaders. We hosted some things called design leadership camps, where you go away for a week, and there's just been everybody that you follow on Twitter and look up to, and you think that they got it together because they're running a huge department at Google or Facebook, and just learning that the industry is so new, and you're going through a lot of the same challenges, no matter the scale, no matter the company, no matter where you're located. And I think that brought a lot of ease to my anxiety, and just realizing that we're all in the same boat, and that there's a lot that we could learn from each other. I think the second was starting to build a team and bring people on that are more experienced than you, and I think that's where I always felt like this person's going to find me out because they have a lot more managerial experience than I do. They've been in these settings, they've dealt with these problems, they're going to see that everything's broken. And I think hiring those people just ends up being ends up building your confidence that you have a team that you could count on. You end up building mentor relationships, even if the people work for you or anything. So it's I think every challenge you kind of hit a new point, but you continually learn and you continually change the approach that you tackle the step at.
Right. So it's almost like you're kind of flexing and building that muscle rather than it just being one hurdle, and once you cross it, it's like gone forever.
Yeah, and I think it helps to realize that you don't have to be good at everything, and just back to that fact that there's a reason that you're here, and even if somebody's coming in with triple the experience that you've had before, you're there to be able to guide them around the organization and fill in some of the domain context that they don't have, and set them up for success.
Right. Any thoughts? Was there any big aha moment in the early part of your career, maybe at Shopify or even before that?
I did have one when I was starting leadership. I didn't really want the position, but my manager at the time was like, "Oh, you want to become a manager?" And I was like, "No, not really." And he just kind of pushed on me for a couple months, and I eventually accepted the position. But I remember feeling for the first year when we were hiring, I was like, I'm not really sure if I'm doing things right. Like, again, I said I don't have imposter syndrome, so I didn't feel like it was like this dramatic thing or like, oh, I'm a fraud. But it was more like, I was like, is there a correct way to do this? And am I doing it the wrong way? And I don't even know enough to not know what I don't know. So I ended up finding peers, and I think Sally and Billy, you both said something about peers, which I think is important here, because I ended up going to this conference in San Francisco. So to me, San Francisco was a big deal when I was younger. It isn't so much now, Toronto's way better. But I was like, oh, people in San Francisco must know everything. The answer is no, they don't. But I went to this leadership conference, and I remember sitting down with all of these people in San Francisco who were leads at Pinterest or leads at Twitter, and they all had the same problems Shopify was dealing with. And if anything, Shopify had better problems. And I remember thinking, like, man, that's a problem, but I'm so happy with my problems. Because like Shopify has a very interesting culture, and in a lot of ways I was very lucky to have that experience. Because growth does funny things to a company, funny things to people, funny things to the work. Just, it gets nuts. And Shopify actually grew at a rate that none of these other startups could match. So not even Stripe, not even all those people, we like doubled every single year. That hasn't been replicated since. So you can be proud of that. Canadian company. Yay! Yeah, but anyway, sorry. My big aha moment was I was like, oh, all of these people have the same problems too. And it's not that big a deal. But peers will like really help you kind of frame your experience and provide you some more perspective around what you're going to.
I think if your company does peer review cycles and things like that, that's been I think probably the biggest aha moment is actually hearing that peer feedback back or from your manager or from your reports. And I think you always paint a much worse picture of what folks think about you in your head. And when the constructive feedback comes back, I think you've already done enough internalization on that you're prepared for it, and all of the positive feedback coming is just the cherry on top. And we're finishing review cycle right now. I just finished doing 2 of them before I came here, and it was great just to delivering feedback to designers that was coming from engineers, which they've not heard directly before, and just leaving the session feeling uplifted and relieved, and I think feeling that they could go in there with a lot more confidence now, and that they're doing something right.
Right. And often I've seen in peer reviews and feedback, you get to hear things that sometimes even, again, you've not realized about yourself as well, and especially when it comes from like engineers and other domains rather than just design. Yeah, definitely, that's really enlightening. And so often, we say that even we need to kind of know what the problem is before we can try to solve it. What do you think is like the impact of the immediate team? Like, does that have any impact on causing that feeling of, imposter phenomenon, insecurity, whatever we want to call it? Impact of the immediate team, or even like immediate peers, I would say, right? So it could be that we are people we are working with, or people we are exposed to on a day-to-day basis.
Is that whether or not the team is? I'm not sure.
Like the question is like, do you feel that there is an impact from our immediate surroundings on how that makes us feel that insecure?
Based on our insecurities or the team's?
Our insecurities, or insecurities, our insecurities that we think are reflected maybe from the team, or maybe it's just our hypothesis. Like I see, Helen, sometimes you on Twitter, I know that you talk about how the design community on Twitter sometimes can make you feel a little insecure. And so just being exposed to that plethora of information, or even just how people give feedback at times, that it can come across.
Yeah, so imposter syndrome is largely, or imposter phenomenon, is largely, so according to one study, based on unrealistic expectations of yourself, but also unrealistic perceptions of everyone else. So you do have to remember that, and this is really cliche, like everyone's a human being. And so like, everyone has their thing that they're dealing with, and you can't see it. And that's fine. That doesn't mean we have to like find them out or like have like a vulnerability share. We don't need to do that. You just need to understand that everyone has their thing they're going through, and this is the thing you're going through, and your perception of reality, so they always say that you act from your own perception. So your perception of reality is just yours. It's your worldview, and you have to understand that. So like, there's things that you're missing, there's things that you don't understand, there's things that you just flat out don't know. And you can do your best to try to fill those holes so that you have a better understanding of reality, so that you're not imagining that this person, I think there was a tweet by my friend Johnny, it went crazy viral, but he was like, I can't shower and eat, like I can't keep up with like having a clean apartment and going to work and making all my food and doing all this stuff. And it's just like, it's a list of like really basic human stuff. He's like, I can't consistently do all of that. Right. And it went viral because no one can. But everyone walks around thinking that like, oh yeah, I gotta be like totally perfect from morning to noon. Like every day I wake up and then I brush my teeth at 6 a.m. and then at 6:10 I go and eat breakfast and then like a perfectly balanced breakfast. Like no one does that. It's not even reflected in our media, so I don't even know where that expectation is. Like if you look on TV or movies, which a lot of people like frame their perception from, like, not even the characters are doing that. So I don't even know why we all have this expectation that we need to be perfect from, you know, sunrise to sunset.
Yeah, and I think, so I guess back to being part of a design team, you are looked to as being the design experts or the voice of the user. So then your product and your engineering peers are looking to you for answers. So you feel like you need, as a team, have to have the answers. And
Right.
sometimes I see that, it's bad, but I've seen people overcompensate or come up with something to make themselves feel like they know the answer when they really don't. I've seen product people do that, and kind of back to what Helen was saying, like between men and women, women might not do anything, men might be like overcompensating and trying to like control the situation, and you can actually see through that quite easily. But once you see that and kind of understanding, yes, again, they are human and they are, they have their own things that they're working out. I don't know, so sometimes like even with stand-ups, you go through what you're doing that day, what blockers you have, and like I've been on teams where teams are very open, and they get real personal. It depends on how much you want to share, but if you're facing something in your personal life that you want to share with your team and letting your team know, that's something that you're going through that I think like builds a really open kind of culture within your team that you can share that with them.
I think as a manager too, where I've maybe seen it affect me or my team, is the imposter syndrome around who am I to give you this sort of feedback or advice? You are an amazing designer. Like, am I going to frame it properly? Am I using the right language? And especially as you get into more and more uncomfortable situations where you're maybe managing people that you don't have direct experience in the same background. And I think sometimes you just have to push yourself to be uncomfortable, and once you see the results of it and how much it's appreciated on the other side, it kind of helps build up your confidence for that.
Right. Yeah, and even the reason I brought up this question was that also quite often, you see early stage folks questioning whether to be kind of, so to say, a big fish in a small pond versus a small fish in a big pond, right? You go work in, and that was also one of the questions by someone in the audience, that when you just go work at a startup as the one-person designer, right? So then you are kind of the quote-unquote expert for the user and for everything related to the UI and design part. But then deep inside, you also know that, okay, I'm just starting in my career stage, and that's actually quite common right now. That are now starting to realize the value of design, and even 4 people startups looking to hire their first designer, which wouldn't be the case 2 years ago. So many of folks in the audience would then go to those startups as the first entry into the career. And so how can they kind of navigate that feeling of insecurity? So but that's really again, as Helen said earlier, like, it's just also realizing it's pure human nature. That is, like, everyone's feeling it, but you might not be realizing, or they might not be showing it that much. I don't know.
I like that laundry list tweak that you talked about, because I feel the same way, and my kitchen's messy 4 days out of a 5-day week because I want to do the dishes, and my wife and I have talked about getting a maid or some help in to take care of this, but I aspire to do it. And sometimes, it just doesn't get done in that case. It takes all your pride and just get the help that you need. I read some more recently, after I read your tweet that you were cramming for this. I read a quote that said, imposter syndrome doesn't exist if you're not trying to impersonate somebody else. And so just really remembering, like, you're your own person, do it for yourself, focus on what you're good at, and I think the rest will kind of fall away.
unrealistic expectations. That's how I feel when I follow Sally on Instagram, and she's posting all architectural photos, and I'm like, I wish I could, just visit this place. Maybe it's just your photography skills. Sally. Do you think the gray area, because design is relatively still new, and we don't have any kind of and there have been these ideas floated about having certifications and kind of formalizing, do lawyers, early stage lawyers or doctors who get the label, that okay, or CPAs, that okay, you did your time in prepping up for this, and now you are a professional, and people can trust you for it. Of course, design still has a lot of gray areas, and kinds of starts seemingly is increasing the gray areas a little bit right now, because we are in that stage of flux and going from traditional design to digital design and different medias of design. How much of that do you think impacts feeling that sense of insecurity, or where exactly do you belong?
I think design in itself is a big gray area. Just the fact that it's very subjective. I think so. Going to art and design school, you're being graded, but you're graded for your presentation and your work, and that's not something that you can put into a Scantron and get a really quantitative you got this mark, right? It's very subjective, and I think that's something you learn and appreciate and be comfortable with that uncertainty. And I think kind of taking that mentality into the workplace is that there is a lot of gray area, right? And the titles and the expectations and what you're doing, and kind of navigating that, knowing that it is gray, and it is an industry that's trying to improve itself and kind of making it more less gray.
Right. Yeah. As we kind of go into the last part of the conversation, which is more around learnings, and again, there is no kind of one way to tackle these things. Someone asked a really good question, which is how do you even balance, that you are feeling that sense of confidence that yes, I do belong, versus kind of knowing that okay, I actually do need to up myself. So do you leverage imposter syndrome to actually work on a skill set, or kind of push yourself a little more? Where is that fine balance, right, between maybe feeling too overconfident versus underachieve versus just the perfect amount of that exists? There are a lot of philosophical questions, existential questions in this panel.
I don't know if I've found that balance. I think, and I'm not. I don't think that I greatly suffer from this or anything like that. But I think I do find myself in a similar cycle of where you're pushing yourself and you're feeling out of your element, and then you kind of have to bring yourself back in check. And I think just making the time to reflect on your accomplishments, and that's hard, as you were mentioning, design, that's hard to do as well. It's not like our peers in product and engineering where you have these metrics that you're being graded on, and you're going to hit a lot of subjectivity, and so it's keeping track of oh wow, I hired 3 great people last quarter, and sometimes that ends up getting overlooked, or we've introduced this, or this is the impact that my design work had on this project that does have a bunch of KPIs to track to it. So I think a couple times a year, once a quarter is just healthy to ground yourself there, and it also helps then show you what you're actually really good at. And I think sometimes that's easy to get lost too, so just painting that picture for yourself.
I think just personally, self-doubt and discomfort is a huge motivating factor for me, because looking back at my career, I think the areas where I've grown the most is when I'm feeling the most self-doubt and most discomfort, because that's when you're actually pushing yourself to be better. You're trying to meet your own expectations, and I think my 18, 20-year-old self now, looking at myself now, she'll be impressed. But if I look at myself now, it's okay, it's so-so. That's because I've been exposed to more work. I've seen my peers and more experienced people tackle more challenging problems, and now my horizon, it's further out now, right? Your expectations for yourself is always going to be a moving target, and as long as you're chasing that target, that's part of your own professional growth, I think.
Well, that's been really helpful for me. It depends on, I guess, your personality. But and I learned a lot from bodybuilding in a way. It's my side passion. I'd say it's my main passion because I can't stop talking about it. Hence, is what's happening right now. So bodybuilding teaches you to just kind of like make a plan and stick to the plan. Like humans are very, very bad at consistency. We think we're better than we are at that. And most often progress and reaching goals has a lot to do with consistency, doing the same thing in and out. And we're so bad at that because it's actually quite boring.
Right.
But I read something like quite a while ago that hasn't left my mind. It says 1% compounded daily is like 3,800% over a year. But it's just like you don't really have to do this like crazy, massive like move from day one. It's just the same thing with bodybuilding. You do like 10 reps times 3, and you do that every day. And then at the end of the year, you're gonna have some sick biceps. But like that's kind of how it works. Like you have to pay attention to. Like you can't pay attention to the thoughts coming in out of your head. And something that also came up right after you announced the topic of this panel, as listening to a podcast about the psychology of bodybuilders, and there was a therapist, a mental health therapist on, and she was talking about how like everyone thinks you have to acknowledge these thoughts that come in and out of your mind, but thoughts are not directives; they're just thoughts. So you can sit there and think, oh man, I'm not good enough. It's like, that's cool, just let it pass. Like you don't have to sit there and act on it. There's a difference between having a past thought, like a passing thought, and sitting there and ruminating on it. And part of imposter syndrome is like creating like crazy like fantasies in your head about you failing. But it's not based in any reality because it's all up here. And you know, like whatever you think about yourself is very self-fulfilling.
Right.
And you know, if you think like, yes, you know what, I can do this. I'm gonna learn this, but I'm gonna learn a little bit every day. And set your mini goal for the day. And then tomorrow, hey, you're a little bit better than you were yesterday. Like that's awesome. There are some people that don't do that. And then over the course of the year, you'll be shocked by how different you are. Like, and especially in your 20s.
Right.
Like, I have no idea who I was in my 20s. Like, I was like, when I look back, I'm like, whoa! Like, don't recognize that person, completely different person now. My life has changed completely. And I've learned so much through my jobs. And, you know, have some faith in yourself. And 1% is okay. And make a plan, stick to the plan, don't mess with the plan. So personal development plans are really helpful. So you can take feedback from like peer reviews and stuff like that, write it down in a document, and be like, oh, this person said this about me. Do I think this feedback is based in reality? If I agree, and I want to change this part about myself, here's how I'm gonna do it. And then work on that plan. And then look back in 3 months. Was I successful? Am I better? Go back to that person. Do you think I improved? And that's good enough.
Right. Awesome. Again, imposter syndrome is, it's not like a very tactical topic, so to say. So thank you so much for sharing so many personal nuances, experiences, stories, insecurities. And I really loved, what all the panelists had to share, that it's more about working on, the human part, whether it be yourself or even on your team, than, it's from the tools part or anything external. Let's have a big round of applause for the panelists.